Welcome to another Wednesday Wisdom edition of The Explainer. Today, we're doing something a little bit different. We're actually going to slow things down. We're stepping away from all the noise and chaos of the everyday world to part the veil, so to speak, and explore one of the absolute most mysterious, captivating figures in all of tarot, the High Priestess. In this explainer, we're going to trace our wild history, decode some of that beautiful, intricate visual symbolism, and really figure out how she acts as this profound mirror for our own subconscious minds. So take a deep breath, settle in, and let's just dive right into it.
Right off the bat, we have to ask the big question. Who exactly is the High Priestess? Well, on paper, sure, she's the second major arcana card in a traditional tarot deck. But if we dig a little deeper, she is a universal archetype. She literally embodies intuition, sacred silence, and hidden knowledge. She's the keeper of secrets, the silent voice of the soul. When she shows up, she isn't demanding that you go out and hustle or learn something brand new. No, she's asking you to pause, to just listen to the wisdom you already carry inside you. But before she became this deeply spiritual figure, her origins were actually surprisingly earthly. Let's take a look at how we got here.
The history of this card is honestly like a giant puzzle, and it shows just how radically our understanding has changed over time. Back in the 15th century, tarot wasn't even used for divination, at all. It actually started in northern Italy as a trick-taking card game called tarocchi. And back then, this card was known as La Papessa, or the Popes. She was literally just an allegorical playing card for wealthy aristocrats to pass the time. Fast forward to the 18th century, and we hit this massive occult revival. You had figures like Antoine Court-Gébelin, who popularized this idea that tarot held ancient mystical secrets. He actually falsely claimed the cards had Egyptian origins. But that idea spread like wildfire, and it totally transformed the deck from a simple parlor game into a mystical tool for cartomancy. And then finally, in 1909, we get the massive esoteric redesign that most of us would recognize today, which actually brings up a really fascinating historical misunderstanding. So what's super interesting here is the clash between myth and reality. Because those early decks called her La Papessa, a lot of people totally believed the card was a secret nod to Pope Joan. If you don't know the story, she's a legendary 9th century woman who supposedly disguised herself as a man and actually became Pope. It's a fantastic story, right? But historians have completely debunked it. It was just a 14th century myth. The reality, in the Catholic context of 15th century northern Italy, this card was just a standard ecclesiastical allegory. It was built into the game as a structural counterpart to the Pope card, representing spiritual authority within the game's rules, not some hidden tribute to a medieval legend.
But, of course, the card didn't stay a simple medieval game piece forever. The real game changer happened in 1909 with the Rider-Waite-Smith revolution. Arthur Edward Waite and the artist Pamela Colman Smith, both of whom were members of the mystical Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, completely reimagined the deck. They took the High Priestess, stripped away the medieval Pope stuff, and turned her into this enigmatic guardian of ancient mysteries. They wove together this incredibly rich tapestry of Kabbalistic, Hermetic, and alchemical symbolism, ultimately turning her into the ultimate icon of the subconscious mind. And here she is. Just take a second to really look at Pamela Colman Smith's iconic artwork. She's sitting there, completely still, guarding the veil of the inner sanctum. Every single detail you see here, literally down to the way her hands are positioned and the exact shade of her robes, was intentionally designed to communicate a deeply psychological and spiritual metaphor. So let's break down exactly what we're looking at, because the symbolism here is incredibly dense, but so rewarding.
Okay, the first thing to know is that absolutely nothing in this image is an accident. First, check out the scroll resting in her lap. You see the word Torah? That signifies divine law and hidden knowledge. And notice how it's sort of half covered by her mantle? That's a little reminder that some truths are spoken out loud while others are only implied. Behind her, there's a veil covered in pomegranates, which is a nod to Persephone and the underworld. That veil is the literal boundary between our conscious, waking life and the deep, dark subconscious. Down at her feet, there's a crescent moon, connecting her to feminine mysteries, intuition, and the cycles of nature. And then look at her blue robe. See how it flows downward like a literal pool of water? That represents the vast, completely uncontainable depths of the unconscious mind.
But for my money, the most striking elements are those two massive pillars on either side of her. You've got the black one, marked B for Boaz, which means in his strength, and the white one, marked J for Jachin, meaning he will establish. These are direct references to the pillars of the mystic Temple of Solomon. They're all about duality, right? Light and dark, conscious and unconscious, action and rest. And where is the High Priestess? She's sitting exactly in the middle. The lesson here is that true wisdom lives right in the tension between opposites. She doesn't force you to pick the black pillar or the white pillar. She's resting perfectly, patiently, balanced on the threshold between them.
Arthur Edward Waite himself had this profound, almost overwhelming reverence for this archetype. In his own guide to the deck, he described her so poetically. He wrote, "She is the secret church, the house which is of God and man, the spiritual bride and mother, the daughter of the stars." For the occultists of the early 20th century, you have to understand, she wasn't just a gimmick for fortune-telling. No way. She was the absolute representation of the highest, most holy inner truth. She was viewed as the literal gateway to the divine that lives inside every single human being.
To really wrap our heads around her energy, it helps to look at her direct counterpart. In the sequence of the tarot, the High Priestess comes right after the Magician, and together they represent two totally different paths of power. Think about it. The Magician is all about the active, conscious mind. It's doing, creating, pushing your will out into the world, outward projection. The High Priestess, she is the exact opposite. She is entirely receptive. She is the subconscious, inward reflection, and the quiet act of knowing. If the Magician is the act of speaking, the High Priestess is the art of listening. And the truth is, you really can't build a meaningful life without a healthy dose of both.
Now, let's ground this for a second. The word intuition can sometimes sound a little out there, like some magical, inaccessible superpower. But while looking through crowdsourced meanings for this card, we came across a secular tarot reader who summed up the High Priestess flawlessly, using, of all things, a quote from Bruce Lee. He said, "Before I learned the art, a punch was just a punch. Now that I understand the art, a punch is just a punch." I love that. What it perfectly highlights is that intuition doesn't have to be some glowing mystical spirit guide. Most of the time, it's just a highly developed, deeply subjective understanding of your own reality. It's that instant gut feeling when your brain processes a situation way faster than your conscious thoughts can even put it into words. She is that quiet, lightning-fast intelligence operating right beneath our rational thought.
And that naturally bridges us right into the realm of psychology. A lot of modern therapists and Jungian analysts actually use tarot cards, especially the High Priestess, as projective tools. Through a Jungian lens, she represents the anima, the unconscious feminine principle, and she essentially acts as a bridge to the collective unconscious. When people meditate on this card, they're using it to prompt deep self-reflection. It's a way to take internal, messy conflicts and externalize them. Just by looking at her veiled imagery, we're kind of forced to ask ourselves, what am I hiding from myself? It becomes this incredibly effective, practical tool for narrative reframing and integrating our shadow self completely without needing any supernatural beliefs to make it work.
If we look at traditional divination, these themes are super clear. When you pull this card upright, it's screaming intuition, inner knowing, and patience. It's the universe's way of saying the answers you're desperately looking for aren't out there in the external world. They're already inside you. You just need to get quiet enough to actually hear them. But on the flip side, if the card appears reversed, it usually points to a blocked inner channel. It's a pretty strong hint that you're disconnected from your intuition, maybe suppressing your shadow or holding on to hidden secrets that are creating tension in your life. It's a gentle but firm warning that you're letting external noise drown out your own inner compass.
And that idea of suppression? That brings us to the absolute core of High Priestess shadow work. The shadow of this archetype lives exactly in the gap between what we know deep down to be true and what we actually allow ourselves to act on. I mean, think about it. How often do we manage to ignore an uncomfortable truth about a relationship or a dead-end job or a bad habit just by staying busy and distracting ourselves? We tell ourselves this really convincing story that we just need more data or more time before we make a move. The High Priestess totally calls us out on that. She challenges us to sit in the stillness and face the things we are actively, sometimes desperately, pretending not to know.
Which leaves us with a final, pretty powerful question for you to carry into the rest of your week. The next time you're facing a really tough decision, before you run out and ask 10 different people for advice, before you do hours of frantic late-night research, just practice the pause. Look inward and ask yourself, what do I already know that I haven't yet been willing to hear? Trust me, the answer is probably waiting for you, sitting quietly right there between the pillars, just behind the veil. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep trusting that intuition, and I'll catch you next time.